The morning sun poured over Seoul's skyline, brushing gold over the glass towers and wedding banners fluttering in the soft wind. Inside the Lotte Grand Hotel, guests shimmered in designer suits and silk dresses. White roses framed the entrance, a live orchestra played softly, and the air smelled of money and pride. At the center of it all stood Ji-hoon, the groom, his smile charming but cold. Every movement he made was calculated, from the way he adjusted his cufflinks to how he held his new bride's hand. To the crowd, he looked like the perfect man beginning his perfect life. But behind that polished exterior, something darker pulsed. He had sent one invitation not out of love, but out of spite, to Ha-eun, the woman who once stood by him when he had nothing. The woman he had left without a backward glance. He wanted her to see him now, successful, admired, untouchable, as laughter filled the ballroom and cameras flashed. Ji-hoon leaned toward his best man and whispered with a smirk, "Let's see how my past handles my present." He didn't know it yet, but that single act of arrogance was about to become the most unforgettable mistake of his life. Years before the glittering wedding, Ha-eun's world had looked very different. She was a quiet, soft-spoken woman who found beauty in small things. The scent of freshly brewed coffee, the sound of rain tapping against her window in a cramped Seoul apartment. Back then, Ji-hoon wasn't the polished man everyone admired. He was struggling, broke, ambitious, and full of dreams that outgrew his circumstances. Ha-eun saw those dreams and believed in them with a devotion that bordered on selfless. She worked double shifts at a cafe during the day and cleaned offices at night, saving every one to support his plans. She cooked his favorite dishes, stayed up late helping him prepare presentations, and told him every morning, "You're going to make it, Ji-hoon." And he did. Success finally arrived like a tidal wave. Promotions, expensive suits, and a new apartment that sparkled with luxury. But with every step up, Ji-hoon began looking down. He stopped seeing Ha-eun as the woman who lifted him, and started seeing her as the weight that held him back. When he left, he didn't shout, didn't cry. He simply said, "You don't fit into my life anymore," and closed the door behind him. Ha-eun stood in silence that night, staring at the empty space where love used to live, realizing she had given everything and had nothing left to hold. Days after Ji-hoon's departure blurred into one long ache. Ha-eun moved through them like a shadow, going to work, coming home, pretending she was fine. The apartment felt colder, emptier. Even the walls seemed to echo his absence. Bills piled up, her energy faded, and the only thing that kept her from collapsing was the faint hope that time might heal what he broke. But time had other plans. Weeks later, Ha-eun sat in a clinic, her trembling hands clutching a medical report. The doctor's voice was gentle yet unbelievable. She was pregnant. And not with one child, but 3 triplets. For a moment, the world went silent. The air felt heavy. Fear pressed against her chest. She thought of her tiny apartment, her empty bank account, her long shifts that barely covered rent. Tears welled up, not from weakness, but from the impossible question that burned inside her. How will I raise them alone? That night, sitting by the window with rain streaking the glass, she made her choice. She placed her hand over her belly and whispered, "I don't have much, but you'll never be alone." It was the moment Ha-eun stopped being broken and started becoming unshakable. Years slipped by quietly, marked not by luxury but by love, exhaustion, and determination. Ha-eun learned to live on 4 hours of sleep, feeding 3 babies in the stillness of dawn and running to her job before the city woke. Her hands were always busy, sewing, sketching, gleaning, but her heart stayed soft. There were nights she cried silently after putting the triplets to bed, not out of regret, but out of fear that she might not be enough. Yet every morning, when those 3 little faces smiled up at her, the fear melted into purpose. Ha-eun discovered her gift for design almost by accident, stitching small fabric accessories to sell at local markets. People admired her taste, her precision, her sense of quiet beauty. One opportunity led to another until she landed a job at a boutique in Gangnam. Her talent shone so brightly that clients began asking for her by name. Years later, she opened her own small shop, a cozy studio filled with soft light, pastel fabrics, and laughter. Her daughters grew into kind, polite little girls, helping her fold ribbons and pack boxes. They didn't have luxury, but they had something far greater: peace, love, and a mother who had never once given up. Ha-eun no longer looked like the woman Ji-hoon left behind. She had rebuilt herself, thread by thread, into someone stronger than he could ever imagine. It was a quiet morning when the gold envelope arrived. Thick paper, elegant lettering, and the faint scent of expensive perfume. Ha-eun turned it over, her heart tightening as she read the embossed names Ji-hoon and Yuna. For a long moment she said nothing. The sunlight caught the corner of the invitation, making it gleam, a cruel reminder of the world she once belonged to. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from sadness, but from the memories that tried to claw their way back. She could almost hear the laughter of those who once looked down on her, imagining how she would appear now, worn, tired, forgotten. She thought of tearing the invitation in half, but then her daughter's laughter echoed from the other room. Their bright voices cut through her hesitation. That's when she understood. This wasn't about Ji-hoon. It was about them. The three little hearts she'd raised to believe in kindness, grace, and self-worth. Ha-eun took a deep breath and smiled faintly. "We'll go," she whispered to herself. "Not to show them what we have, but to remind them what they lost." She closed the invitation, her decision made. The woman who once trembled in fear now stood with quiet confidence. She wasn't going to the wedding for revenge. She was going to reclaim her dignity. The wedding day dawned bright and cloudless, the kind of morning photographers pray for. Outside the glass doors of the Lotte Grand Hotel, sleek cars gleamed in the sun. Guests in shimmering dresses laughed over champagne, and Ji-hoon soaked in every glance of admiration. Everything was perfect. The music, the flowers, the cameras flashing in rhythm with his ego. Then the murmur began. A new car had arrived. Not just any car, but a glossy black limousine that slid to a stop at the red carpet. Conversations faded into whispers. Heads turned. The chauffeur stepped out and opened the door. Three little girls emerged first, identical in pastel hanbok-inspired dresses, their hair tied with white ribbons, their eyes bright and unafraid. They walked hand in hand, drawing every gaze in the courtyard. Then from the car, Ha-eun stepped out. Her gown, deep green silk, elegant and understated, flowed like calm water. The morning light touched her face, revealing a woman who no longer carried pain, only grace. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the bride's smile faltered as Ha-eun's presence commanded the moment. Ji-hoon froze. The smirk he'd worn all morning vanished. He looked at the woman he once abandoned and realized she no longer belonged to his past. She had outgrown it completely. For the first time in years, it wasn't Ji-hoon who owned the room. It was Ha-eun, poised, unbothered, radiant, walking forward with her daughters as if the world itself bowed to her quiet strength. Inside the ballroom, the music played on, but the energy had shifted. The laughter felt thinner, the lights dimmer, as if Ha-eun's quiet presence had drawn all eyes, all whispers, all meaning toward her. She took her seat calmly, her daughters beside her, their small hands folded neatly in their laps. Ji-hoon tried to regain his composure, flashing strained smiles for the cameras. But his eyes kept drifting to Ha-eun. Every time she moved, every time her daughters laughed softly, something inside him twisted. He had wanted her to look broken, defeated. Instead, she looked untouchable. People who once pitied her now leaned closer, murmuring admiration. "She looks incredible," one woman whispered. Another guest, remembering Ji-hoon's cruel stories, shook his head in quiet shame. As the vows began, Ha-eun listened silently. No bitterness, no pride, only peace. She didn't need to prove anything. Her life already spoke louder than any words could. When the bride walked past her, their eyes met briefly. Ha-eun simply nodded, a gesture so graceful it felt like forgiveness. And in that small moment, Ji-hoon saw what true power looked like. Not the kind that comes from wealth, but from surviving everything meant to destroy you. The ceremony ended, but no one was talking about the bride's gown or the groom's smile. Every heart carried the same image, the woman who walked in with nothing to prove, yet left everyone speechless. In the days that followed, Seoul couldn't stop talking about the woman who arrived in a green gown and turned a wedding into a lesson in grace. Photos of Ha-eun and her daughters spread quietly through social media, not because she sought attention, but because people couldn't forget the way she carried herself. Ji-hoon's perfect image began to crack. The same friends who once praised him now saw the truth behind his charm. A man who traded love for pride and ended up empty-handed. Yoona, his new wife, smiled for cameras, but the sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. Meanwhile, Ha-eun returned to her boutique, where sunlight poured through wide glass windows. Orders flooded in, not just for her designs, but for what she represented: resilience, humility, and quiet power. Clients whispered, "She's the woman from the wedding." As they admired her work, her daughters grew strong and kind, knowing their mother's story not as one of pain, but of strength. They often asked, "Yama, do you hate Appa?" And she always smiled softly, replying, "No, my loves. He gave me you, and that's all I'll ever need." Ha-eun didn't win through revenge. She won by living beautifully, by choosing peace over pride. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe for more stories of strength and kindness. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Ha-eun? Your words might comfort someone still finding their way through the same storm.